All right, we're going to discuss the latest developments in the PotashCorp Israel Chemicals deal. Joining us to do that, amongst other issues, is Premier Brad Wall of Saskatchewan. Welcome to MarketSense, Premier Wall.
Thanks for having me back.
It's our pleasure. Let's start with that topic, because the CEO of Israel Chemicals came out and said, you know what, maybe not such a bad thing if there's a merger with a large player, while the finance minister of Israel still thinks this is our property, our crown jewel. We're not sure we see it the same way. What's your opinion on this?
You know, when we were making our own recommendations with respect to a takeover not long ago of the PotashCorp, we basically said, look, countries around the world that are free trading countries make decisions with respect to foreign investment. And Canada shouldn't, if we don't believe there's a certain takeover that's in the interest of our country, we shouldn't shy away from making those kinds of decisions that are made in other countries that are free trading nations. So they'll make their decision. The government there obviously is the group that has standing with respect to the approval process there, and they'll make their decision as they should, just as Canada made its decision with respect to BHP. Now, the deals are markedly different in terms of scope. In our case, we were talking about a company that you could arguably make the case controlled over, you know, somewhere around 30% of the world's reserves, proven reserves of potash, and so the scale here is different, but the principle is the same.
Premier Wall, it's a two-part question. The first part would be, have you had any conversations with anyone in Israel about this potential deal? And the second part would be, because of the stance that you took on the BHP deal, do you find yourself, even though the deals are different, as you say, in a awkward, understanding position? What would be the adjective you'd use to kind of catch where you are in those conversations?
Well, the first answer is no. I haven't had any discussions with any officials from Israel with respect to this particular proposed deal. And with respect to your second question, I think there's understanding. I hope I touched on that on my first answer. They're going to make a decision in the that they believe that are in the interests. Maybe they don't use the metric net benefit, but are in the interests of their country, and that's what's happening in the world of takeovers and mergers today. Countries around the world, as I've mentioned before, free market, free trading countries are making decisions on these things, and Canada has done some similar things and has made some actually new pronouncements with respect to oil sands and state-owned enterprises here in the wake of CNOC. So, I think it's understanding would be the word I'd use is understanding in answer to your second question.
Premier Wall, just to shift focus here a little bit as well, there was news out the other day that path has been made here for Canada, Saskatchewan in particular, to be able to sell and export uranium to India, which is expected to also triple their electricity use over the next 25 years. So talk to us about the potential impact economically for your province.
Well, there's a significant impact, certainly, that could happen for Saskatchewan. You may know that in our most recent budget, we took steps to lower our royalties in uranium. They were very high, rendering our business environment here not very competitive, frankly, to attract either brownfield expansions in uranium or greenfield or new mines. So we've made that change in this budget. We're phasing in some competitive measures there, and that combines nicely with our efforts as well, together with the federal government, in trying to improve market access. Up until now, Saskatchewan uranium, Canadian uranium, and Saskatchewan is responsible for about 17% of world production. But Saskatchewan uranium's been shut out of the two most robust civilian nuclear markets on the planet, China and India. This federal government, credit to the Prime Minister, I don't think there's a Prime Minister that has done more for Canadian access to uranium markets, Saskatchewan uranium principally, than this Prime Minister. But we have a nuclear cooperation agreement finalized with China, one now very close with India, and it means literally billions of dollars over the next decade in terms of uranium sold. Canadian uranium sold into those very dynamic civilian nuclear power markets. So this was an important step. The Minister Oliver was in province just earlier this week on Monday, made the announcement that the final hurdle's been cleared. Now there's some administrivia that needs to happen with India, the nuclear cooperation agreement with them, and it could mean $650 million more worth of uranium, we think, over the next number of years. In the case of China, it's the measures in the billions of dollars.
Premier Wall, how much negotiation here in Canada, though, within your province in terms of these companies has to take place in terms of actually seeing some of the benefits? I guess the question really is, how prepared were they for this news?
Well, through displacement, I think companies were doing business with, certainly in China, because Cameco, the world's largest, or certainly one of the world's largest uranium entities, headquartered in Saskatoon, has properties around the world that have agreements already with China, and so there's a bit of displacement happening perhaps, but in terms of jobs in the north of our province and when we might see the economic impact of these changes, I think it is over the next number of years. It's measured probably in years and over the next decade, certainly. But I think you'll be hearing about expansions going forward. And, there's a great success story with respect to the uranium industry, and I'll reference Cameco specifically. Over 40% of their workforce in terms of the mining in northern Saskatchewan is First Nations and Métis. It's Aboriginal, it's northern people employed, and this is a great success story for the industry. And these are obviously good jobs, and we like to see more of them, and we think the chances of seeing more of them now with improved access to markets and more competitive royalties from our standpoint are much better. The chances for that are actually improved.
Premier Wall, you mentioned in one of your previous answers that you were giving credit to the federal government. You just talked about jobs that were in the industries in Saskatchewan. I want to get your thoughts on the new training program, the employee training programs from the last federal budget, and the role that the provinces are playing, and now the role that the federal government's playing. Are you in love with this new program? Do you see it as a step up?
We agree with the principles that the Minister of Finance has announced. We want to see training dollars better linked with the opportunities. We have a labor shortage here in the province of Saskatchewan today. I think there's probably over 10,000 jobs on a website called saskjobs.ca. And so we need to engage employers, which this new process would, but we need to make sure that while we engage employers so that they're actually helping to fund some of the training, that we're training for the positions that are available. And I think if you've got the private sector involved, basically mandated to be involved, our chances of training the workforce for the opportunities available now in the mid and the long term are much improved. Now, it means some changes from a provincial standpoint. We're investing in new training dollars in our province, new apprenticeship positions to try to deal with the labor shortage. So we're confident we can align with what has been announced by the federal government as we negotiate the details. But in principle, we're supportive of the direction they're wanting to go. We've got a labor shortage. Better to have the employers involved in the training, and better to focus the training opportunities where there are actually job vacancies and not a small number of them.
Premier, well, I want to get your take as well in terms of the current discussions as it relates to Keystone XL pipeline. What's your sense in terms of what's going on right now?
Well, we're in that important time period between the State Department's report, I guess, about over a month ago now, that basically cleared the sort of environmental hurdle for the pipeline, and between that and the President's decision, the decision by the administration. And so it's why we were in Washington not too long ago trying to make the case, pointing to Canada's environmental record, actually, which I think is very important. We need, I think, to give the White House some environmental elbow room to make this decision and clear up some of the misconceptions about what we're doing in this country, a country that has, frankly, more aggressive coal regulations than the U.S., a country that is home to the jurisdiction, in the case of Alberta, that was first to put a price on carbon. In our case, we have greenhouse gas legislation already. We have the largest clean coal project that we're aware of in the world. And so we need to make that case, and we've tried to help out with that. I know Premier Redford's there now doing the same. The federal government needs to, and they are taking every opportunity to go down and make the case for Keystone and the environmental case for the country. So this is a very important time for this particular project as we move towards approval, as everyone's speculating sort of late spring, early summer.
Premier Wall, last question. Recent Angus Reid poll named you as the most popular premier in Canada. You have a persona that extends beyond your province's borders. Is there any expectation that we will see you on the federal stage in politics at some time soon?
No, I struggle with one of the official languages, so I think the answer to that is no.
All right. I'm sure many people are disappointed by that answer, but thank you very much for joining us again on MarketSense.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall, and he joined us from Regina.